So hello to all of the glorious people of the interwebs. I hope you guys are having a very glorious Friday night, evening, morning, wherever you are in the world. I shall switch transitions now, because for some reason I did not. Here we go.
Voices talking, that's even better.
And we are live with Eric Musco and Charles Boyd, the community manager, and the creative director of the game. And I asked them to do the introductions, damn it, and I'm doing it for them.
That's less things we have to do. Which is,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's cool.
He's Charles and I'm Eric.
Correct. Hey, look, but he actually got
it right
on the right side.
I did get it right. I had to get this right because otherwise it was just going to annoy me too much. Also, the background was tight. It's tight. It's awesome. It's very awesome.
It's good.
It's minimalistic effort though. Okay, so thank you all for joining. I see lots of people here already, which is very, very awesome, and questions being asked already. I guess we're all very eager, which is a good thing.
I'll give you a retweet by talking. I'm gonna
do it. Do
it
it now.
I'm really doing it.
Okay, so to give everybody a quick rundown of what we are going to be talking about today, and make sure you pay attention because you're going to need to know this. Today we are going to be talking about PvP, Conquest, I guess kind of the current state of the game and the game overall, along with the future of the game and just some sort of missed questions. There will be some other things thrown in if there is time, but so everybody knows, we are only set for 1 hour, and we currently have roughly 56 minutes left of that, so we're going to try and fit in as much as possible. So what I want you folks to do in the live chat is I want you guys to decide what we talk about first. Again, that's Conquest, PvP, the current state of the game, operations, that kind of stuff. If you guys can just put what you want to hear first in the chat, that is what we will be beginning with. And in the meantime, I'm going to hand it over to Charles and Mr. Eric Musco so they can introduce themselves again properly, because I am terrible at introductions and they deserve a proper one. Let's do it.
Okay. You want to go first?
My name is Eric Musco. I am the community manager on Star Wars: The Old Republic, so the name you will see on the forums most often.
And I am Charles Boyd, the creative director on Star Wars: The Old Republic. Possibly the second most cursed name you'll see on the forums.
Am I first?
Probably Keith. Probably Keith gets a lot of heat. I don't know, but
that'd be a poll.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
We should try to share that more evenly between the two of us, honestly.
Probably.
Okay, so I'm seeing a mixture of different topics in here. That is very diverse. I like it. I think
luckily you'll probably cover them all anyway.
Yeah. I think
I'm seeing a lot of love for the beards.
Thank you for that. Which is good. Which is good. So I think we'll begin with Conquest. I'm seeing that in there a lot. And since there was a post today,
I imagine why that would come. Yeah.
We can probably get that a bit quick. Yeah, I don't know why people are talking about Conquest, and I have no idea. Did something change with it? I don't know. Okay, so
some things have changed, probably. Yeah.
So to begin, oh God, I'll try not to expose all the questions too soon. Right. So there is 2 questions which was heavily requested that I ask Eric and Charles first, okay? It's just 2 very short questions, gonna get them over with, and people in the Discord thought it'd be fun, so we're just gonna do that, okay? So to begin with, guys, I'm going to ask you, do you know how to tame a horse in Minecraft?
No.
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering that with your honesty.
I have tamed
I'm glad
a
this question
unicorn
is here.
in Oblivion.
Yeah. I used to tame mounts in Ultima Online. just follow them around. It's weird.
Oh my God. Okay, and then the second question, which is it's kind of an opinion piece, and I think this relates to the upcoming boxing match that I think is going to happen. But it's just KSI or Logan Paul. So if we know of these 2 in a boxing match, I'm assuming this is for.
I have no idea who KSI is. Couldn't tell you, but I know I don't like Logan Paul, so I'll the other guy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's probably for the best, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, hopefully,
I hope
hopefully
he's a better person than Logan Paul. So
don't know.
Go the other way.
All right then. So in case anybody didn't know, obviously we're going to be talking about Conquest to begin with, and that's what we're going to move into now. But there was a post today about Conquest, so if you didn't see it, I would urge you to go and look at it after this interview, because there was some pretty neat changes made to the points, and there's also a kind of clarification from Eric a little bit later on as well, to do with legacy based objectives, etc., etc. So to begin with, we are going to be asking. Okay, this is a very long question. I will not summarize this. All right, let's do this, guys. Conquest. So, the Conquest revamp has been received for the most part, and I like to use this word loosely. Uproar from the community. I'm using that very loosely. Too little points rewarded. The yields are too high. Rewards are not good enough. The crafting changes are not good, etc. I've seen the post on the forums where you stated you would continue to monitor Conquest and make adjustments if needed. Again, there was the post from earlier on today. If we compare this to Galactic Command, does this mean eventually Conquest will go back to, or at least very similar to the way points worked before, along with the types of objectives? What would you have to say about this?
Yes and no. I think that all of the Conquest changes started out of one, a large desire to have people actually get their rewards.
The whole thing had to be rebuilt just because we wanted to make it actually function correctly,
right?
Which many of you will remember was a problem.
Yeah, way too many times did I have to make posts about sorry, your Conquest rewards didn't go out. So part of it was definitely getting the Conquest rewards dealt with. While doing that, there's definitely some other changes the team wanted to accomplish. And if you look at the first post that I made, I tried to outline really specifically the goals that the team had in mind. And someone actually asked one of those goals as an example is like Conquest was pretty homogenized. So
each Conquest week to week.
In every Conquest, it was largely the same. It was you could do whatever you want and you'd get the points. And so someone actually asked a really poignant question that I saw earlier, which is a lot of the changes that we've made is kind of going directly against that goal of the homogenization. Like we made it not homogenized. Everything was very particular. And it's actually correct. Actually, we're kind of backtracking on that because we were wrong. Players gave feedback that they thought that you should be able to play a lot more variety of activities. Players are diverse in what they play to get the points, and we agree. So we're undoing some of that. So I don't really think this is the same as Galactic Command. Those are very. I mean, Conquest is a system that only a portion of the players engage with. And admittedly, it was a fairly small portion and something that we wanted to grow with some of the changes. Whereas Galactic Command was how you access all content in the game and all itemization. So they're very different in how they affected the actual game. But I do think that to that question, there are things that existed as part of Conquest pre 5.8 that we may have missed the mark on, or we cut too deep, or things like that. And that's the stuff that, if you look, I mean, we've already made 2 large sweeping sets of changes, one in 5.8a, and then the stuff that's coming in 5.9, and we'll continue to keep looking at it. So I don't think it's not a thing where it's going to revert back to what it was in pre 5.8. It's not quite like that. But I definitely think we're just going to keep making changes till we get it to a place that everyone's happy with it.
Okay, that's awesome. I think that's kind of where I was going. I think I might not have worded this entirely correctly, but with like, in regards to like it being similar to Galactic Command, not in to respect of what it actually is, but as to how Galactic Command evolved over time, if that makes sense. Like it dramatically changed over time.
Yep, and the thing is, like, Galactic Command was an entirely new system, so like the only reason I say that I don't think it's an entirely fair comparison is like Galactic Command still exists. It's still how you access different parts of content in the game. It's been rolled into Activity Finder. It's still a supplementary system of gearing, so it added additional parts to the game. This was kind of revamping a different system. So, but yeah, I think no matter what, ultimately the point they were trying to make, which I would agree with, is that yes, it similar to Galactic Command, it is a system we're going to continue to monitor feedback and data and make changes accordingly. So till it's in a place that people are happy with it.
Awesome. I think that does probably, to be fair, clear up a lot of things, especially with the post that you made earlier on. Again, I am going to urge people to check that out after this interview. If you want to check it out now, then feel free, just tab out or whatever. So moving on, and again with Conquest, and this one is relating to the PTS, the public test server is what I'm referring to here. Would you say that if these changes were available on the public test server for the public, awesome wording there, Sam, a lot of the animosity could have been avoided?
Go ahead. You can go first.
I mean, yeah, for sure. You know, we would love to be getting a lot more stuff on the PTS, whether in a closed environment as we've been doing it with operations, or in a more open style like we've done a few times in the past. It's hasn't been realistic for us in the way that we have planned our releases lately, but it's something that we agree with the community on that we should be doing more of. So we've definitely been talking about it, especially this last couple of weeks.
Yeah, that was I think the very first conversation that happened following the Conquest release was,
how can we get more people playing stuff earlier?
We need to get this stuff on public test. And it's a pretty deep rabbit hole to explain why things with things going on PTS, there's a lot of different challenges. And those are the things that we're working on resolving so that we can put more things on PTS. Because we agree, frankly, there's not everything, certainly not everything, because there's an element of not everyone. In fact, participation is typically one of the challenges with even open PTS. And then there's also the element of people giving feedback on things they haven't actually played, which is also challenging. Also, it's harder to get data if people aren't playing it. So there's some of the challenges that come into it, but absolutely at first glance, people would have seen the points. Like the changes we made in 5.8a, we would have caught almost immediately, just like we did with 5.8 going to the door. The targets are too high. Personal conquest is too high now. We need to lower those.
Everyone gets these 2 objectives automatically.
Right, exactly. Yeah. We would have caught that stuff faster, so 100%.
I look at how the ops turned out this year and how much the testing really helped that process. And I think that is a sure sign as anything that more of that could be good.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, the operation is awesome anyways. I think we'll be touching again on the PTS anyway, so don't worry about all the PTS questions, guys. So I'm fairly certain we do touch on it again a little bit later on, but relating to a different type of content. Okay, so moving on. This one talks about Conquest Rewards. So the question is, in my opinion, the large yield has terrible rewards for the amount of work. Okay, now this was originally in mind of the first yield that the large had, which was a surplus of 2 million, which is now, I think it's less than half of that now, which is good.
It's 1.13, I think, or something.
Yes, but still, I would argue that the rewards are crap for the amount of work, which could also be said for the medium yield. Exactly what do you talk about when discussing what to reward players?
So one of my favorite things about this specific topic is this was something we talked about a lot coming in, about how we make sure that we encourage guilds to go after the yield size relative to their guild size. Because just looking at conversations on the forums and Reddit, players had the exact same conversations we did. Well, why don't you just force it? A guild's a certain size, then they can only go after that size. And then there's a whole rabbit hole of problems that come with that. And so we kind of went through all those motions as well. Part of the challenge that came when we released 5.8, my understanding at least, and Charles can maybe elaborate as well, is if large is too good and it gives too good of rewards, then you have the inverse problem, which is that all of the small guilds feel like they don't have access to rewards that large guilds do. So the problem is can go one way or the other. And so that was kind of where we landed on, let's just keep the rewards largely what they are now, but just increase the quantity at which you receive them.
But that wouldn't that be the same as complaining that veteran mode or master mode drops better gear than story mode, even though the content is technically harder?
I don't, because in that case the content's harder. The conquest is a question of volume, right? Like you could have,
how many people do I want to have in a guild? How many people do I want to keep organized week to week?
Right, but then there's managing like all of that and having all of that work. So obviously, I think a difficulty factor would play into that.
And I would agree. And I think that like literally before I walked over here to have this, we were talking about some things that the team is considering doing to give rewards for large that no other tier can get, or maybe a reward that is leaned into for large and then slightly there for medium and not there at all for low yield. So we're looking at options because we know that right now our data doesn't 100% support everything that players are seeing, in that there are still people going for medium and large. And obviously, I think you're always going to get the largest amount of guilds going for small because it's the smallest yield, and most guilds are small.
Right, you're going to have a lot more small guilds than large.
But still, nonetheless, it's definitely something we're still talking about. It's possible for 5.9, actually, that may still be the thing that's there. And I should point out, with my post that I put up earlier, that may not necessarily be every change that's coming, because even after I made that post, there's still a multitude of changes we're talking about. So things like this are stuff that will continue to change in the future.
Right.
Okay, then. All right, so I think with that, we will move on to the next question. Which is about the competitiveness, I guess, of their Conquest and how some guilds are pretty much dominating the leaderboards. So here's a question. How do you plan to combat larger guilds having a rotational system for winning Conquests? If I could suggest something, and I actually feel like this is a good suggestion, but hey, whatever. Why not lock out a winning guild from winning twice in a row? They can still compete in Conquest, but avoid of first place rewards.
Something I'd consider. I mean, you'd have to consider the rotation of the Conquests, right? Like, oh, now I don't want to win this week because I need to win next week, and it could get into a place where it's punishing to some degree, but at face value, I think that's something worth considering. I mean, honestly, I read the forums and see people talking about guilds, breaking up into 10 smaller guilds and dominating all of them over and over again, which is not obviously the goal of the system. So we wouldn't take that as a win, but I think it's something that we'll definitely be trying to figure out a solution to. I don't know if you've talked to anyone more about that this morning.
No, not specifically that this morning. I think one of the things that's tricky with Conquests is similar to something like open world PvP. If we had a systemic open world PvP system, is part of it has to be self-regulating. I mean, if a large guild is highly organized and contributes a ton of effort into completing conquests, we also have to be careful to understand that there's potentially hundreds of people that are working for content, and we don't want to take away their ability to win either, because they are actually earning it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't also, we have to realize that there's also all the other guilds that then aren't winning, right? And so there's a little bit of hopeful community self-moderation, but if that gets too overblown, there's obviously something that we have to put systemic ways of stopping that from happening. So it's definitely something to be aware of.
And of course, everybody can still earn the rewards from completing the yield anyways. It's just the first place rewards that people are.
Right. And it's one of the things, right? It's one of the reasons we made the change about not having to be on the leaderboard anymore, because that solves the need to have to compete. But it's certainly not lost on us that most people want the titles and the achievements for getting first place. And so we've even talked about other bigger solutions to allow more people to get that. But then you have the inverse problem of, if you're taking exclusivity away from winning, then
it's less desirable.
That's less desirable, but it's because it's desirable that it's a problem. So it's like,
Okay, that makes sense.
Keep the suggestions coming, because we're very interested to hear what people think.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think I would be the best person to speak about with Conquest, to be honest. Pretty much all of these questions were crafted by the community. So, okay, so pretty much the next thing I have here is about taking questions from the live chat about Conquest. So just really quickly, guys, I'm going to go to the next question, but if you folks in the chat do have a question for Conquest, if you could just go ahead and just post it in, just spam it if you need to, and we'll roll back around to it in like 2 minutes. Okay, so the next question for you guys is going to be, would you say that in the future, if this type of content isn't available via the public test server for the players, would more communication with the changes be better? Such as telling people what's going to happen rather than saying, I don't know why I'm using this, woohoo, Conquest revamp, get hyped, etc., etc.
Yes and no. I think the part that I would say, so 2 things. There are absolutely very key components about Conquest that we should have communicated ahead of time, and that's on us for not doing so. Things like the schematics changes, the overall idea that crafting was going to be targeted as something that was going to get worse. Things like we were going to not allow people to have never-ending repeatable objectives for operations, things like that we designed specifically to address. We should have been more clear about those things. I don't think there's ever a point that, especially in a large revamp, where we're going to post every single nuanced detail. Simply just, I don't know that it's sustainable to actually give all of that information.
Right. Well, and a lot of stuff is in flux right down to the wire, right? So it's
exactly.
Yeah,
but
and
I think
of course
that
it's still changing now.
There's very key parts of information that were left out that should not have been, that we could have started getting this feedback sooner, for sure. And I think, to your point, it's one of the things we talked about a long time ago. We've actually gotten better about this with class balance changes, typically anyway, not always. But if they're not going to be available to play on a PTS situation, whether it's closed or open, that we will get those changes posted ahead of time so that people can see them and give us their feedback before they actually get their hands on it. So in case there's anything that we're missing, we can account for it. And so it just hasn't filtered over into the other parts of the game, and this is a prime example of where it needs to.
Awesome. Okay, so I did see a really good question, and let me scroll up here just so I can grab the name, just so they can get the credit for it, all the awesome credit. So the name is Archetype Saper, and the question is, why does Total Galactic War no longer have all planets for selection? Also, what about adding new planets, Typhon, Korriban, etc.?
Yep. 2 parts. The reason it didn't originally is the idea was for consistency to put all of them at 3. It was very clear when we put that out the door that was not desired. So I believe, literally right before I came over, that they changed it to Total War being back to 13 planets. So I think that's already in the future.
So that is something that will be changing then.
Yep, and also the other thing is that, like, part of the problem with Total War is it ran very infrequently. It was problematically infrequent, in fact. So the idea would be is that most likely what will happen is that it won't be a part of the random rotation anymore if we have all 13 planets, or I think it's 13 planets, but having all the planets in Total War, it will not run randomly as part of the random schedule, but we will actually intentionally schedule it similar to how we do with like Raccoon 3. So it'll actually be a conquest event of sorts. But I will verify everything I just said is true, but that's what I believe happens.
Awesome. Okay, that's pretty cool. So there was another question.
We've been talking about Conquest for like 2 days straight, so that's why I'm just making sure that the things
like
I'm
full on
talking about
prepared
are real
to this,
and not
aren't
just
you? Like you're not taking any of it, pulling no punches. Like I got this. Hold my beer, on my water in this case. Okay, so I think people are getting a little bit frustrated with Conquest questions, even though I have seen a couple more good ones in there. What was that one I just saw? I hate how this auto scrolls back down. That's so annoying. Okay, let's move on, because I guess we have been in this for like 20 minutes now. So the next thing we're going to move on to is operations and kind of like the state of the game in a sense. They're like kind of meshed together. You'll see anyways. So this next question, it is kind of long-winded. But you know, I can rephrase.
In-depth question.
Yeah, like you know, you gotta fit it in there. You know what I mean? Okay, so it's taken roughly 11 months to release Gods from the Machine. If I'm right, anyways. I actually thought it's 15 months at one point, and I said that in a video, and Peter was all like, "Nah, that's wrong, man. You read the patch and that's wrong." I was like, "Oh God, no, this is bad." So roughly 11 months to release the entire operation. Now, I do personally believe this, and along with lots of other people. Now, I think that I can speak on behalf of a lot of the community, if not the entire community, when I say that this is borderline unacceptable. From an MMO that charges a monthly sub of $15, purely for that reason alone, I would expect more. The operation itself is, of course, now among my favourites, because it is. Isaac's box, by the way, spot on encounter. Still wiping on it to this day. A big thank you to Matt, of course. Matt Pusovic. Get his name right? Of course I did.
Yep.
And his team for making it. But the fact still stands that 11 months is far too long for one single operation, even though that this goal was set in mind to begin with. Can you assure the community that future operations will be full releases, or will this be a new trend for operations in Star Wars The Old Republic? If so, how do you justify that with a monthly sub?
Oh, I mean, I'm trying not to be a little catty with it. I feel like if your only reason for subbing is operations, like I feel like there's sort of a false premise there that the only thing the game provides is operations in order to provide a $15 a month value, which I don't necessarily agree with. Perhaps that's true for some people. And I wouldn't say that they're wrong necessarily, but
and I think part of it is, I think the thing that people have to realize, like if you look and you go, like let's say it's true that you just look at the game for operations. One thing that we've tried to change a lot, especially since Keith took over, is, and you actually said it in your question, you knew that information. You knew that Gods from the Machine was going to come out over a long period of time. And granted, we actually missed part of the original delivery time and we delayed it. But we also told you that in advance as well. And so if it's a place where someone feels like something's unacceptable and that's not valuable for their sub, at the least we can do is make sure you have that information so you can make that decision. Like I can't tell you what I think is acceptable for $15 a month for you or for anyone. But at the very least, we can make sure you have all the information to know what's coming and when, so you can make that decision for yourself. So that's one of the things that we've really tried to change, is that we're trying to be much more communicative about the future as best we can, as often as we can, so that people can make those decisions. Because someone may decide that they don't think it's worth their time and they walk away. That's okay. But at least we gave them that information to do so. And we'd rather they don't, of course. But just so they have that information.
Which is it's all very true. But if we were to go back a couple of years and we were to look at a previous expansion, for example, Shadow of Reven, which I think would be a brilliant example here. Now, this was a paid expansion, I believe. I'm trying to recall the amount that it cost, but I think it was either less than or the same as a monthly sub. Actually, I think I'm recalling $19.99.
I think it was $19.99 if you were a sub. If you weren't a sub, I think it was $29.99. I think it was a different price depending on whether you're a sub or not.
Okay, so
could be wrong.
With that in mind, I think what's been mentioned before is that moving forward, we're going to be having this. If you're a sub, then you just get the expansion. Is that something that's going to happen with the next expansion, or is that going to be a paid expansion?
Yeah, I think it's currently it's a ways out, so we haven't really made that decision yet.
Right.
Right.
But those conversations come up every time, right? Because there's a difference between those things. Part of it is it's a great perk for subs to be able to get the subscription free of charge. We could roll it in. Sometimes we feel that it should have a separate cost, because then it also allows people who are non-subs to play it. So like those conversations come up. We did it with code fee, but then even when we were going into CodeTet, we still had that conversation again of which way we do it. So that will come up at any time.
Okay, so I see some troll questions in the chat about an expansion. An expansion is coming. Yes.
Yes.
Confirmed. Yes. 6.0 confirmed.
Yes.
You got a date?
No.
No.
Yes, but we can't tell you.
Oh, you do have a date.
Oh no.
Not really.
Of course you have a date. You've just told me you have a date.
Yeah, just to be clear, the next update after 5.9 is 5.10, not 6.0.
Correct.
So it's
is that actually true? There's a 5.10?
Yeah.
Oh
to be fair,
God.
I think there might be a 5.9.1.
Oh yeah.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
Whatever. But there will be a 5.10. It will not go. It will not be a 6.0.
Okay, right. So
Not right.
what is the last patch before the expansion? What is that going to be called?
TBD.
Yeah.
It depends on if you saw the way we do production plans.
5.3700.
Yeah, it's 5. It's 5 dot something, and it depends on like some things are in this update, and then it's like, well, what if we made another update X weeks later when we slid that out here? Like it's a moving thing. So
well, and there's always a discussion, right? Is it better to do lots of small updates or a handful of bigger updates, which would change that number drastically? Yeah, it's up in the air.
Yep. Probably sometime around 5.23.
5.23. Oh my God.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, so here's an inspired question really quickly. The next expansion, obviously which we know is confirmed, is the name going to be Knights of the ...
It is not.
It is
I
not.
haven't decided what the name will be, but it will not be that.
Oh, do you get to decide the name?
Not entirely by myself. You know, we have lots of people who do care what we call things publicly, but yeah, usually I get the challenging, we'll say, job of coming up with names for things.
Do we get to know of any current ideas you've had for a name?
No.
None at
I can
all?
tell you there are ideas for it.
Yeah.
Can we at least know the first letter?
It's in the alphabet.
Oh, it's in the alphabet.
It
What a
probably
surprise.
isn't a
That
number.
narrows it down so
I
much.
feel pretty safe saying it won't be a number,
Yeah.
like a numeral. It might be the letter that is the first letter in a word is a number, but probably.
Then we're going to decide to use lead speak, and it's going to be
Probably
spelled
not.
out in
Oh,
numbers.
God.
And we're like, well, we've lied to them. Stream's going to come back to us now.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Okay, right, let's move on to the next question. Again, this is operations. In regards to what is played, is operations among the most replayed content in Star Wars: The Old Republic? Now, I know that's kind of a bit of a stupid question to ask, but anyways, it's there. If it is, wouldn't this make operations a priority for development?
When you say most replayed, do you mean replayed often by the largest number of people, or do you mean there are perhaps less people doing them, but there are enough of them doing it over and over and over again that total replays is the most?
I feel like I mean both.
I think the answer to both is no.
I think it doesn't matter. I think the answer to no is
I mean, percentage-wise, operations players are certainly not the largest group. They're actually a comparatively small group, not an important group, as we've said many times now. You know, they're key.
Is it in the top 3?
Sorry.
Is in the top 3?
I mean, it depends on how deep you break people down, right? Because a lot of people do GSF and PvP. Everyone does PvEs of some kind. So
currently, what is the most
I don't know that I
replayed
can create a
content?
top 3 that everyone would agree, you know, that those are reasonable classifications. But
to answer part of your question, that in no way dictates how or what we build.
Right.
If you look at this past year, especially, the team has done a good job of doing everything, right? There was a new GSF map.
Right.
There was
GSF definitely not in the top 3 either. But
I could assume that. Don't worry.
So amount of players that play content don't solely dictate priority.
Right.
Not even close.
Yeah.
It certainly factors in.
Yeah, of course,
but
right.
It's not in any way.
It just seems really strange to me. But of course, then again, I'm not a developer, so I wouldn't know how that would work. But still, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay, so moving on, and this is going back to the PTS. Why is the PTS no longer available to the public? I'm not sure if we answered that earlier on. I understand that with Knights of the Fallen Empire, Knights of the Eternal Throne, of course, these are story expansions. So if you were to put those on the PTS, it'd be like they're just seeing the story early, and that's just not a good idea. When it comes to operations, PvP, GSF, Conquest, etc., why are those not open to the public for testing specifically? And that I do personally feel a lot of issues could be solved by bringing this back. Now, I know we did kind of touch on this earlier, but if you wanted to expand on it a bit more, maybe to do with like operations, PvP, etc.
Sure. I mean, a lot of it's kind of technical stuff under the hood that we generally don't talk about publicly. In terms of why it takes a fair bit of work to get those things spun up and going and keeping them up to date while we're also updating our own internal servers and then creating a final patch. There's a lot that goes in and out of that. And also, but in defense of that, and kind of to your point, we went a long time where it's very story, which we generally don't put on a public testing environment. And I think to some degree we just got out of the habit of it, which is totally on us. Yep. So I think it's something we should, like we said before, be doing more of.
Yep. And part of it too, part of the reason sort of is participation. I'll be perfectly honest, participation on open PTS is never good. It's always very bad, in fact. And so one of the things that's the challenge that we look at is how do we incentivize people beyond just the ability to play new content and give us feedback? How do we actually get people to play it? And I'm not just talking about giving feedback for it, I mean actually play it, which is a challenge in of itself. And closed PTS actually doesn't have that problem because it's a smaller group of people, especially for like ops and stuff, they tend to be a little bit more hand selected. And so they are highly engaged in making sure that they're working with the team on playing the content and giving feedback. And so it gives us a little bit more of a laser focus on getting that feedback. But that also has the secondary problem of you're missing everything outside the laser, which is what OpenPTS has the value of. So like Charles said, like I said, I think this is the first conversation we had following 5.8 is we need to get more PTS stuff.
Yeah, making it easier to get your characters onto PTS as well. Obviously, that was something.
It'd be nice to just have some kind of like add-on in the launcher rather than just re-downloading the entire client. For somebody who lives in the UK with super slow internet.
Whether we can, how much easier we could make.
You're still going to download the whole game. Yeah, that's going to happen.
Something that we like to improve.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Recognize that as a reason for participation.
I appreciate you taking that into consideration. Okay, so the next question is about, oh my god, it's about the next expansion. All right, get ready to be shut down, guys. All right, here we go.
The way's out, guys.
Okay, so I imagine I know what your answer to this is going to be, but is there anything, and I mean literally anything at all, that you can tell me about the next expansion? Except that
we did say
yeah, sure.
We said it exists. That's new.
So we'll even say a little story stuff. So
fair enough.
Hello.
No details, but and starting after we've got the story in 5.9 coming out here in the beginning of May, and that's going to kind of conclude this whole Theron Trader story arc, and also pretty much put a capper on all the Eternal Throne related activities for the most part, in terms of being the focus of the story. And we're definitely going to be getting back to a Republic versus Empire core storyline, getting back to that war, revitalizing it and kind of getting into the core original kind of SWTOR conflict. And so expansion. I feel depends on how much story comes out before it, I suppose, but I would be willing to bet money that it will feature Republic versus Imperial storyline.
Oh my god. So, confirmed next expansion is going to be called Star Wars: Republic versus Empire. There we go. There we go.
7 Republic versus Empire, I think is
the dark versus the light.
We gotta get a number in the front now.
There you go. Just use the dark versus light title. Dark versus light. Like, boom. How awesome would that be for your marketing as well? It'd be so easy.
Don't give them ideas, Sam. Don't give them ideas.
If you use that, I want 100% of the credit.
Someone clip this so I can send it to our marketing team. Please.
Dark versus light. It has to be dark vest as well.
We are known for our Imperial bias.
That's true.
All right, okay.
Both sides.
That's true.